Welcome to the Fast Break Podcast, everybody. I'm Ari Betterly here with Ryan Costello and Griffin Healy in person. How are you guys doing today?
It's amazing to be on camera finally. Now you guys can see us and not just imagine what we look like if you didn't already know what we looked like. But I'm excited to talk some basketball because it's been a really quiet week in Bloomington since there hasn't been men's or women's games.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, aside from my travels around the States, it's been a very chill week, but getting back from West Lafayette and having a week off.
Yeah, that
and
week off.
Just, keeping an eye on multiple updates throughout the team and now getting ready to cover the Northwestern game this Sunday.
I feel like the week off was nice for both the players and for the media because it was a lot of boom, 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 boom.
Oh, my gosh,
right back from winter break, so it's nice for the little break, but I think we're excited to get back to Assembly Hall.
I completely agree. I've been very excited to just listen to updates on the team. I'm sure they've been well rested, and I've been well rested as well, and I'm ready for Sunday.
Yeah.
But going along with that, let's start off with a very hot topic in women's basketball. Sydney Parrish. So her foot injury, just found out this morning, according to Coach Moore, is indefinite, and that her game will be her playing in the game will be updated every single game status. So there's no date for when she'll return. She's on crutches. It's been a big loss overall for the Hoosiers, but Parrish has been averaging really well for the Hoosiers. So it's going to be interesting to see how Indiana combats this like they did at Purdue this upcoming weekend in the next couple games to see if she comes back. But yeah, let's dive in. Talked about Parrish, but let's talk about that Purdue game. So, Griffin, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so obviously being at Mackey Arena, what an environment that was. I mean, the fans were really getting into it. They're just, they created a ruckus environment, and the Hoosiers still managed to persevere for their 10th straight victory over the Boilermakers. I think the first thing to note is that Chloe Moore-McNeil had a career-high 20 points at Mackey Arena.
Yeah, that was big.
And her and Scalia, who both had 20-point games, and I believe it was Moore-McNeil had 4 assists and 3 rebounds, and Scalia had 4 rebounds and 3 assists. So very similar games from the two in 40 minutes played. They got a lot out of Garzone, too, who had 17 points. And you didn't have to necessarily rely on Mackenzie Holmes as much as you did in other games. She only had a 15-point game, but still played very well.
Yeah, and building off of that, I think Purdue made it a goal of theirs to really get Mackenzie Holmes and be in the paint with her, and you could see that by the way the setup was for their team. But I do think that these players stepped up significantly, and it showed their veteran status against Purdue. Even Purdue's coach, Katie Gerald, mentioned that Purdue, when they took the lead, Indiana didn't even get frazzled at all. They were still calm and composed. They came out and showed their maturity. And in that third quarter is when they really stepped it up and came back to win the game. I mean, Purdue only shot 20% in that third quarter, which I think was a really defining moment of the two teams. There was a bloody battle going on back and forth there for a while, especially with that environment you mentioned, Griffin. But, yeah. Go ahead.
My apologies. Something to note, too, is that Indiana made 15 threes in that game compared to Purdue's 5. That is the most made on the road this season.
I think it was the shooting primarily that helped Indiana get that win because they started off kind of rough in the first quarter.
Especially
Purdue,
with the rebounding, too.
11-1. That's always that's been an issue that they've kind of seen throughout the entire season, and one that they'll have to look for in the Northwestern game because Northwestern's a little bit better of an offensive rebounding team, but they were able to fight back with that rebounding battle, and it was the shooting that really primarily, I feel like, propelled them to that win.
Yeah, I mean, that second quarter was huge for the Hoosiers, especially with the rebounding. Like you said, 11-1 in the first quarter, and Terry really went in on that in the press conference at Purdue, saying obviously it wasn't good enough. And in the second quarter, they cut it down only to 5. I mean, Purdue still led, but it was 18-13 in the rebounding battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think really it was nice to see Yard and Garzone kind of have maybe not a breakout game, but
a stabilizing game in a way.
Stabilizing game, kind of getting back to that scorer we've seen throughout her career, but having that 17 points and seeing the scoring a little bit more spread out through the starters was nice because Mackenzie Holmes, the game before, had 32. So it was nice to see the rest of the team kind of join the party, and hitting 15 3-pointers helps a little bit.
I would completely agree. Also, there was a lot of new faces that got to take some time on the court as well. I mean, Lexis Bargesser started for the Hoosiers, although she didn't score. Coach Moore mentioned that her defense was very much needed against that Purdue team, and they predict to use those players again off the bench to really kind of help elevate Indiana's defensive game with Parrish being out. So moving on to Northwestern, what do you guys think overall is going to happen this upcoming weekend with Sydney Parrish being out?
I think, like you said, they're going to need to see players like Lexis Bargesser step up, and the other people off the bench kind of go into that scoring mentality, because Sydney was...
Like Lily Meisler and Jules Lemondola.
Lily, but both of them, Lily and Jules, will both need to step up, because as of late, Sydney was on kind of a tear with hitting 3-pointers, averaging a little bit more than her average. I think it was around 12 points, but really stepping up. She was in the starting lineup, so they're really going to need to see those. Lexis and the new starting line in the lineup, probably starting, and just seeing those other players step up.
Yeah, I also think that the Hoosiers are going to have to keep working on those turnovers. That's been their biggest flaw in the past couple of Big Ten matchups. I think against another Big Ten team that has a slightly better record than Purdue, they're going to need to keep that in check and keep it hopefully under the number they've been having. I think it's been ranging up in the teens each game. So it would be nice to see the Hoosiers kind of eliminate that statistic a little bit and grow in that aspect. What do you think, Griffin?
Yeah, I think for the Northwestern game, too, a key is you have to guard Northwestern's junior forward, Kaylee Walsh. She's one of their leading scorers at 13.1 points per game, and she has 6.1 rebounds, but she also shoots 45% from the three. So kind of like what Ryan was alluding to earlier, where it was you need to defend a three, you need to defend the best player on the court as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with her, she can kind of kill you in multiple ways, because, like you said, she can hit the three. She is good in the paint. She'll get those rebounds. And another thing Indiana needs to do is to prevent Northwestern from getting to the free throw line, because Northwestern leads the conference at 79%.
Yeah, that's big. That's a big
free throw
stat.
shooting, and Indiana's towards the end of the conference in that category. So they need to make sure they're not fouling too much and forcing them to the line, because that wouldn't be, at least from an Indiana standpoint, a good thing.
Yeah, and I also think last thing building off that is that they just need to play together. I mean, they lost a starter. That's a big loss, but Coach Morin said that it's not their first go-around. Grace Berger was out last year, and they managed to keep that chemistry alive without her. So I think they're just going to have to do that with bringing in these younger players and having them get into rotation, especially with another Big Ten team. You can't not have good chemistry, and you can't not have a good foundation, which they do have. But, yeah, with their assisting, their turnover ratio, and all the things we mentioned, I think is going to be super important.
Playing together is very important. Indiana has been third in the conference with almost 19 assists. So playing with those new players, not new players, but players getting more minutes than they have been, continue to go to their the things that they've been good at the rest of the season.
Yeah. Well, do we want to move on to some Maryland ball, which is going to be coming up in the further on future, but it'll be next week, which this is going to be a quick turnaround for Indiana after Sunday. They have Maryland and then I believe Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep.
So 3 games in 1 week is going to be big. So let's talk about it. What is your guys' thoughts about Maryland comparatively to Northwestern?
Yeah, so Maryland is clearly... obviously not in a rebuilding state. When you have Brenda Fries as your coach, you don't need to say that, but it's clear that they lost 2 key pieces from their team last year to the WNBA. The Terrapins lost their senior guard in Diamond Miller to the 2023 WNBA draft, and she was selected 2nd overall by the Minnesota Lynx. So there she had 19.7 points per game, and that's the most averaged by a Terrapin since Brianna Jones in the 2016-17 season. Another player that Maryland lost was senior guard Abby Myers, who was selected 11th overall. There in her lone season with Maryland, because she had played 4 with Princeton, she averaged 14.3 points and 5.1 rebounds and 2.3 assists per game. So going into the portal, they got North Carolina State guard Jakia Brown-Turner, and she averaged 10.5 points per game and 4.3 rebounds with the Wolfpack, and now she currently has 10.9 points and 4.7 rebounds. But the key player that Indiana needs to guard in this game is Cheyenne Sellers.
Yeah.
She has 16 points, 5.9 rebounds, and 5.4 assists per game. And I believe it was last year she was nominated for the Lieberman Award, which is like the equivalent to the best point guard in the nation.
Yeah. Ryan, what about you? What's your thoughts about Maryland?
I mean, you see it with what Griffin just said. Last year, they have 2 of their players selected in the top 11 picks in the draft, which is pretty impressive. And that shows you the caliber of the program Brenda Fries has built. They won the Big Ten, I think, like 3 or 4 times in a row right when they entered the conference. But they do have their most losses. They're tied for their most losses in the conference with 4 since they've been in the Big Ten. But if you look at those losses, it's been a bunch of close games. 3 out of the 4 of those games have been decided by, I think, 8. Yeah, like single digits. So it's been really close, and it's been to some of those top teams like Ohio State and some more competitive teams like Michigan and Nebraska. So even though that they already do have 4 losses, if you kind of look at those losses, it's against good teams.
And as we know, like in the Big Ten, every game is different, and every team brings their A game. There is no like, I don't even know how to describe
Night
it.
off.
There is no night off in the Big Ten, exactly. So it could be one game that's slightly off for Maryland there, but who knows, against Indiana, they could be prepared, they could be scouted, they could be ready, and so Indiana needs to prepare for that indefinitely. Any other thoughts about Maryland?
Indiana's never won in College Park. They're 0-6, so I think they're hungry to probably get a win in College Park, but it as we've seen with the history, it hasn't happened for them, but they have had more success against Maryland the last couple times. They've won 3 out of their last 4 games. And 3 out of those 4 games have been decided by 7 points or less, so they've all been pretty close, other than IU's 11-point victory in the 2022 Big Ten quarterfinals. So I think, regardless of Maryland's record, they always play pretty good at home. So I think Indiana needs to be prepared pretty well, and they'll get to see more of their new lineup without Sydney in the Northwestern game. So they'll be able to analyze what they need to do differently going to Maryland.
Yeah. Okay, now it's a fun part, you guys. My favorite part. Hot topic for the week. Okay, first hot topic I listed on here is, who do you think is going to be the MVP of the the Northwestern and Indiana game this weekend? I know for me personally, I think Chloe Moore-McNeil has been a really steady guide for this Hoosier team. She's been honestly killing it. She did 20 points the last game against Purdue, and overall has just been a stable player for the Hoosiers, especially with Sydney Parrish out. I'd like to see her do that again against Northwestern. I feel like this is going to be an overall answer, but I think Kaylee Walsh is going to be a big contributor to Northwestern. I think she obviously has the statistics, my goodness, to prove it. But she's reliable, and I think that overall that all of us might agree she might be the one to look out for Northwestern. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think obviously, like you said, across the board, we would all be picking Kaylee Walsh. But I think one person to also note from Northwestern in the MVP is their sophomore guard, Caroline Lau. She averages 7.2 points per game and 3.8 rebounds, but she has 5.9 assists. So she's able to facilitate the ball very well. And I think that's something you got to also, guard. Again, you have to guard the best player in the court.
Yeah.
You have to guard someone who can facilitate the ball. I think for the Hoosiers, like you said, Chloe Moore-McNeil, who's been playing great at the 1. I think my MVP, if she gets hot, it's going to be Sarah Scalia. If she can shoot the lights out from outside the arc.
Yeah, Sarah showed us in that Bowling Green game just how hot she can be with 8 threes. On the Northwestern side of things, I think because they're the 4th best three-point shooting team in the Big Ten, I think a player that Indiana needs to watch out for is Healy Weaver. She has over 22 makes from behind the arc, so I think that is someone that they're going to need to focus on and play pretty good defense on. And then going back to Indiana, it's the first-team All-American player, Mackenzie Holmes. She had 32 against Minnesota at home, so she likes playing in Assembly Hall, and I think she'll be ready, especially with having this past week off.
Yeah, that is all good answers, everyone. I would 100% agree with both of you. Also, I have to mention, Griffin, you're the stat master. Can we just talk about that? Griffin Healy is the Hoosier Network stat master.
I mean, I know a thing or two about numbers, but like, you know, it just comes down to like prepping for that. Like, again, you need to know, like, okay, this team shoots like 45% from the three. Kaylee Walsh. All right, we got to protect her from outside the arc. Make them take awkward shots from inside the paint. I mean, it just depends on what the team comes with.
Ryan, do you think that Griffin enjoyed statistics class growing up? Because I personally think that.
I think so. He's always spitting them on the podcast. You know, he just has them in his mind.
He's got them.
It's pretty impressive. I don't know if I could keep all of those in there that well.
For as much as I bring statistics into this, I was never good at math. I was always an English and history guy. I mean, I don't think I could do a math problem to save my life, so it's probably a problem if I'm talking statistics.
It's easier to look at numbers when you're thinking about sports. You're not
what I was going to say.
You're not doing calculus with that. So, what about? I have another hot topic.
Okay, let's go.
What would you say your score predictions? Oh my God, I can't get
all of us are like spitting out our words randomly today.
What would you say your score predictions are with this Northwestern and Indiana game? Ari, do you want to go first?
Honestly, can Griffin go first?
Okay.
I want to see what you guys have to say, honestly.
All right. Well, looking at Northwestern's schedule, there's been quite the split of home and on the road, but it also comes down to competition as well. And they keep it close with some competition. They kept it only 11 points with Penn State, who's an underrated team in the Big Ten. But then you also have a game like Ohio State where they lost by 30.
Yeah, that was a big loss for them.
It really depends on how hot Indiana gets from outside the arc and if Indiana can defend the three. I'm going to give Indiana an 8-point victory.
Okay. Honestly, I would agree with you, Griffin. I think it could stay kind of close, but also the fact that Ohio State beat Northwestern that badly pretty recently gives me a prediction that they might win in double digits, especially at home. The Hoosiers love to put on a show, and it's obvious, especially like Mackenzie Holmes, a veteran who can take down any competition in her home court. So I could definitely see Indiana taking a 10 to 15 point lead and keeping it steady throughout the game.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable at all. I'm giving the 8-point one, but like I could so very much
He's
see
giving
that
Northwestern the benefit of the doubt here.
Just a little bit, but again, there's no off nights in the Big Ten.
Exactly.
Ryan, now to you.
I think they showed us they can make 3-pointers without Sydney Parrish, and they did that on the road, which is pretty impressive, shooting that well. So I think they'll probably, because Northwestern's defense is towards the bottom of the Big Ten, I think they'll probably get some open shots, and I think Sarah Scalia likes to shoot at home. She's like I said earlier, she made 8 3-pointers from behind the arc against Bowling Green, and I think with not having Sydney, she's going to get a bunch of those open shots. So I'm going to go kind of high. I think 88 to 66 Indiana. I think they'll get hot from behind the arc, and maybe Northwestern can stay close for some portions with their free throw shooting and their threes, but I think Indiana towards the second half, especially the end of the third and the fourth quarter, will take it away.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think all of us have great predictions. We'll see how they turn out this weekend. Thank you guys for joining us for the Fast Break podcast. I can't speak. Thank you. My allergies are going crazy. But thank you guys for joining us today. We've enjoyed this so much. I love being on camera. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
We're not just audio now. We have a visual aspect to it.
You can see all of our pretty faces.
Right?
And come listen to us next week after you have listened to this podcast.
Yeah. What about you, Griffin? Any final words today?
No, I mean...
Give us some knowledge, Griffin.
Oh, some knowledge. Wow, you're putting me on the spot.
I have to ask for some Griffin Healy knowledge today before we go.
Yeah, I guess, let's just have a great day. It's going to be, just grateful for every day.
Honestly, couldn't have said it better. Grateful for every day watching women's basketball.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you next time on the Fast Break podcast. I've been Ari Betterly, Ryan Costello, Griffin Healy, and we will see you guys next week. Thank ya.